Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Dialogue Podcast. Today we're talking about how you can see God in absolutely everything around you, and what is the difference between something being idolatry and you start paying too much attention to the creation versus the creator, and what is actually pointing you towards God and helping you develop a deeper understanding of his character and what he wants to be and do in your life. Greg Ford. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you.
I see that you are going to leave your phone out today.
I pretty much always do.
Is this like phone a friend? Like if you just
potentially
need to
depends
real
on
quick.
where this convo goes. I might need to search the World Wide Web, one of the many search engines, to get an answer.
That actually reminds me of that video you showed me the other day from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, that like throwback clip. By the way, that was just a great era in television. Regis Philbin in his monochromatic suits. That was great. Anyways, if y'all have never seen this clip is awesome. This guy gets all the way to the final question that's going to win him $1 million. He says he wants to call his daddy, like hadn't used any lifelines, right? At that point?
I don't know.
Okay. But he calls his dad with his phone a friend thing. His dad only gives one word answers to every question, which is just fantastic to begin with. His man is clearly a man of few words. But he gets on the phone with his dad. Regis like turns it over and he actually says, "Dad, I don't actually need your help on this question. I just wanted to tell you I'm about to win $1 million." It's like the best clip ever. I had never seen that. Just that how does that feel to just call your dad and be like, "Dad, listen, I just wanted you to be the first to know. This is about to go down if you're not watching right now."
That was a pretty impressive display of confidence.
Yeah,
and
it was.
competence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It wasn't hubris. Like it was not misplaced
No, he was totally
confidence.
under control. He was totally
He
under
knew.
control. And he's like, "Yeah, call my dad. Dad just want you to know about your son's about to win."
And for anyone wanting to know what piece of trivia won him $1 million, do you remember what the question was?
It was something related to the presidents.
Which former president appeared on an episode of Laugh-In?
Was it Nixon?
It was Richard Nixon. So there you go. If you ever find yourself in that position where that question matters, you have that up in the file now. So
We're off to a fiery start.
Wild start.
Yeah.
Okay, so excuse me. Diving into the actual topic.
Well, actually, do you think we had we this is the first one since we're back from Italy.
Sure.
Maybe we take a few minutes and talk about that experience a little bit.
Yeah.
What surprised you about it? What did you like about it? What was your most memorable parts of it?
Oh, man. First of all, so many steps.
There were a lot of steps.
So many.
So we did.
And by steps, I mean stairs. So many stairs.
Yeah, we did 4 days in Positano, which is on the Amalfi Coast. So that was our kind of vacation portion. Mm-hmm. And
it's built into a cliffside,
I counted,
straight up.
Yeah, I counted 350 steps. So we did 2 days in a hotel that was near the bottom and then 2 days in a hotel that was near the top.
Just stay at the bottom. Unless you love steps. If you're the kind of person that goes to the gym and you're like, you know what sounds like fun? The Stairmaster. Then stay up somewhere high.
350. You're going to get 350 on your way up. But it does work well if you're trying to work off those carbs you just ate.
That's true.
Which I did.
We may or may not on the last day have eaten 3 large pizzas between the two of us in one sitting.
I'm usually pretty guarded,
which is not normally
on
how
my
we
carb
roll.
intake because
You are
Yeah, it's not because I don't love carbs.
nearly militant about carbs.
It's because I would pack them on quickly. But I decided, when in Rome,
literally have all the things.
do as the Romans do.
And eat the pizza.
And the Romans eat all the pasta.
All the pizza.
All the bread. And so I just went completely undisciplined, unchecked, zero self-control for a week.
Totally worth it.
So the 350 steps came in handy for me.
It did. And then after the 350 steps, it's another, probably quarter to half a mile, just like uphill walk. So it was, it's steps everywhere, but it was gorgeous. Truly looks
great.
like something out of a storybook. Absolutely beautiful. And then when we went to Rome, I think for me, that was even more of a highlight. just because, like, you know, people say like, oh, such and such is my Roman Empire. Like, the Roman Empire is my Roman Empire. And so it was just unbelievable that just everywhere you looked, you were surrounded by history just living next to you. You know, it was unreal. I took 2 steps into the Pantheon and was like immediately crying. Like, it just got to me. The Colosseum, the Vatican. I mean, just everywhere we went, we saw Circus Maximus. We saw, I'm trying to remember what theater it was. Do you remember the old theater? It almost looked like a mini Colosseum. I don't know why I'm blanking out, but it was one of the Caesar's sons had this just beautiful theater. I mean, everywhere
I honestly
went was
felt
stunning.
like my eye and brain couldn't absorb everything I was
It
looking
was
at.
like drinking from a fire hose.
I was
truly.
trying
A
to retain
historical
everything.
fire hose.
Yeah, I was trying to retain everything, and it was very difficult.
Unbelievable.
Just a lot of stuff. Yeah, you could definitely go back multiple times. And I will say this, one small disappointment was the coffee.
That was a big disappointment.
The coffee wasn't very good. Number one, it didn't taste great. Number two, it wasn't as caffeinated as what we're used to here in the U.S.
Yes, brace yourself. If you are a high caffeine intake person and you go over to Italy, I can't speak for the rest of Europe, but if you go to Italy, like, you're going to need to drink twice as much coffee or just switch to Red Bull.
I was
for the
counting
week.
on the caffeine to help me with the jet lag.
And it was not
And it took me
doing it.
longer to get over it.
Yeah.
I was expecting a little better. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to go to negative town because Italy was awesome.
It was.
The whole thing. It was
best
absolutely beautiful.
coffee you've ever had, South Africa. Go to Africa for coffee.
I think best coffee I've had is First Watch.
First Watch has good coffee.
First Watch's coffee is so underrated.
I mean, I like it. I can't stand with you on like it being that exceptional, but it's good coffee.
Well, I also don't have a refined palate.
No, you what do you mean? Of course you do.
I do not. It's gotten slightly more refined, but it went from caveman to
caveman
to
palate.
middle,
He's like,
to middle class. You know.
No,
yeah.
it was great.
It was awesome, and shout out to Pastor Jen.
Pasquale, is that how am I saying it right?
Pasquale in their church in Rome, the International Church in Rome. Just so cool what they're doing.
Yeah,
reaching people from
I was gonna say it really is neat. We had a chance to not just attend and you spoke there, but also spent some time with them that afternoon, asked them a lot of questions, just got to know the people in their area and the way that they serve. And it really is such a unique congregation because they have probably the most multinational church I've ever seen.
Like 90 countries, they said.
I mean,
represent.
just wild. Like people from every corner of the planet there. They're one of the few primarily English-speaking churches in the city. And so they've really become kind of this neat haven for people who don't really know where else to go. They've got a lot of people there that work at the UN or they're there to go to school for engineering or things like that. And so for them to be able to find a place where they could have connection, they could meet like-minded people and they could actually build a community was really cool. And I think they did such a good job of really being there for one another and really creating like threads of community that were really special. Kind of a neat, just quick little snippet of someone that we met there. One of the younger girls, she was a college student that we met, was from Iran. She had moved to Rome for school. She was there to study engineering. She and her mother had become Christians through stuff they had found online back home where she was from. And so she had never met another Christian in person until she got to Rome and she got to the church. And she was just so excited because anyone she knew that she had a relationship with that was a Christian was purely online. And so it was just really special watching her like meet all these people that she had started talking to and had built relationship with. And so I think that's just like kind of a microcosm of what they do there, right? They did a great job of building a space for people that maybe felt like they were a fish out of water or they felt like they didn't have a home, and they gave them a place to call home. And it was pretty cool. So honestly, what I wanted to talk to you about was kind of related to the trip. So it's a perfect segue because there was a conversation that you and I started having as it was actually after we walked through the Vatican, which was just, I mean, one of the most stunning historical, artistic, architectural displays I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, which, by the
Unreal.
way, when we were in Amalfi or Positano, we were having dinner one night, and there was this woman who was talking really loud in the table next to us, and she was like chewing her boyfriend out. And she was talking about how much she didn't like Rome. Do you remember this?
I vaguely remember this.
She was like,
I kind of blocked it out.
She's like, Rome was such a waste of time. Like, she was talking about how bad Rome, and we hadn't gone to Rome yet.
Yeah.
And then she was talking about how the Vatican was, take it or leave it, whatever. So, I mean, certainly, just her whole ethos, I wasn't just going to sign on to whatever she was saying.
I'll be honest, I think I probably wrote off her opinion at that point.
But I was like, that's an interesting take.
Yeah.
You know? And I found she was dead wrong in my opinion. Of course, it's all in the eye of the beholder. But, like, the Vatican was unbelievable. I thought it was, just the amount of brilliance and details. I mean, you look up, down, right, left. It was like incredible.
Yeah, they just for anyone who doesn't know, they actually have museums at the Vatican. It's not just, if you were a Catholic, that it would be a beautiful place to go. It really is spectacular architecture, spectacular historical content. You walk through the museums. I heard a statistic that if you spent 1 minute looking at each artifact in the Vatican museums, just 1 minute, 60 seconds per thing, and never stopped until you got through all of them, it would take you 12 straight years to see that, like, just wrapping your brain around everything they have. They have things not just from ancient Rome, but even predating that with ancient Greek architecture and sculptures and historical content. They had so many things from so many different cultures. They had these tapestries that were like just works of art, not just in the size and scope and the fact that it was hand woven, but the fact that you would look at it and depending on what part of the room you were in, the entire image within it shifted. Just mind-blowing, like the level of genius. And then you walk into the Sistine Chapel, which is on the premises there, and it had been explained to me before how he had really used the paintbrush to almost more like sculpture, and his paintings felt very three-dimensional. You can't wrap your brain around it until you walk in and see it, and you realize that a flat painting on the ceiling really looks like it's coming at you. Like, it was just unreal. And you think about the things that some of these things are hundreds or even thousands of years ago, was really mind-blowing.
I felt like I could walk through that thing every day for 10 years and see something new. And it really was truly humbling. Yeah. Like, sometimes you hear people say, I'm so humbled. And often it's like they win some big award. They're like, I'm really humbled. It's like, are you? And maybe they are.
Maybe the word you're looking for is honored, which is honored. Also, that's a better word, right? It's.
No, I was humbled. I was walking through there and not in some kind of like unhealthy way, but I was like,
no.
I was like, I am not even close to as good at anything as these people
at this one thing. Yeah.
Are at this one thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I just walked through
the sculptures.
Like, I'm so
and
stupid.
To see like the tools they use to create these sculptures.
Oh.
And the idea that if you mess up, you mess up. Okay, you've messed up a sculpture, right? Like the one, I can't remember what it's called, but it was the thing that Michelangelo made at 22 out of a single piece of marble.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like flawless.
And you see every vein. It looks like it's breathing and alive, and you're like, just like
I told our friend Joe, who was with us, I said, I think we misuse the term genius.
100%.
Like, I think we overuse it. I'm like, we call this and that and everything genius, which again, not taking anything away from anybody else, but
sure.
but the amount of just incredible
artistry.
Yeah. It really was overwhelming.
It was.
I felt myself trying to appreciate it at what it deserved and not being able to. Being frustrated with myself that it's like I felt like I didn't have the capacity to appreciate it to what it deserved to be appreciated. But I would highly recommend. And we had we had these earpieces in, and we're listening to a tour guide who is not just a tour guide. I mean, she was like an art historian.
I was going to say she was a walking encyclopedia.
I mean, and she was actually a great presenter. Like she was entertaining.
A blast. Yeah.
But learning everything about, again, she was giving us a voiceover of all the work and some of the backstory and everything. And she kind of got us through a few lines that might have taken longer. So anyway, if anybody's there, Barbara was her name. Look for Barbara.
Get it.
I don't even know the name of the
I don't remember the name of the tour company, but find Barbara.
Yeah, anyways.
She was unparalleled. But all that to say, the question I had for you was based on a conversation that we had after we had left the Vatican that day. We were grabbing lunch before we hit the airport. And we had this conversation where we were like, it hit us as we were walking through there. I found myself being in a place where I felt very in awe of God, but it wasn't because like, oh, their art was about God, and so it made me think about him. And, it was like, no, whether it was some ancient piece that had nothing to do with Christianity, or it was something that was specifically about Christ or whatever, I was so in awe of the divine gift that was placed inside of the people who created these things. That, and not the content of their art, but the ability and the passion that went into it and the craftsmanship that went into things, that was what pointed me. And to being in this place of like, wow, like just giving you that fuller scope of the awesomeness of God. And I'm curious some of your thought on this, because I think a lot of times growing up, I know I heard the message that it was like, kind of, you were afraid that you would be distracted by the creation instead of pointing to the creator, or that all the content that you made had to be Christian in nature, or that all of the things you consumed had to be Christian in nature, or that if you spent too much time thinking about or looking at or paying attention to things that weren't specifically, church or Bible or whatever related, that you would somehow be looking away from the awesomeness of God. And I'm curious, just what were some of your experiences in that moment, and did it highlight any other thoughts for you regarding that?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing you bring up. I think to kind of think through that. So I think there's a caution around idolatry in any form, right? So the idea that we would worship a created thing, or to worship a person instead of worshiping God, is obviously something that's a sin. It's something we don't want to do. But to go let's think about this all the way through. Like, at what point, without going and becoming ultimately humanistic to the degree that we're acting, taking the credit away or the glory away from God to glorify or admire or acknowledge people. But you got to kind of really look and think about it, because there's some interesting things in the Bible if you really look at it. Like when Deanna and I were studying, we were working on her message, and she initiated, hey, I got some thoughts on the woman with the issue of blood. And so we just took a couple sessions, and we just looked at that text and thought about it and tried to see the things we were missing and whatever. And one of the things that's interesting is when she's healed, so she touches, the hem of Jesus' garment and she's healed. And Jesus says to her, "Woman, your faith has healed you." Mm. Your faith has healed you, which makes us all a bit uncomfortable because we want to go, well, no, it was God's power that healed her. Mm-hmm. And of course, taking nothing away from the power of God.
Absolutely.
But Jesus seemed to be pretty intent on her acknowledging her part. Like, she could have stayed in bed that day. Mm-hmm. She could have done a bunch of things. She could have allowed discouragement, fear, cynicism to keep her from paying the price and doing the thing to get to Jesus. And that term, your faith has healed you. It says the man lowered through the roof. When Jesus saw their faith, and what did he see? He saw their action, but he could see the faith behind their action, seeing their faith. Mm-hmm. And there's several times that Jesus says, your faith has healed you. I would say even all the way back in the beginning of Genesis and the creation narrative, where you have God saying, looking at his work and saying, it is good, creating man, saying it is very good. And he's giving us a model. And there is a model there, certainly to glorify God, but also to take a moment to enjoy and appreciate and admire the work you do. Mm-hmm. And that's not a sin.
That's right.
I think, like pretty much all sins, but most things, it's more complicated than just black and white.
That's right.
You got to kind of push it beneath the surface, right? So I think whether it's your work is being done to promote yourself and elevate yourself above other human beings for a sense of superiority, like we talked about Sunday, the Tower of Babel.
Right.
They wanted to use their technology to build a skyscraper as a testament to their own greatness. Mm-hmm. Well, there's nothing wrong with the skyscraper. There's nothing wrong with technology. There's nothing wrong with making a great building. But if you're doing it to make yourself godlike, instead of to appreciate the image of God in you.
That's right.
And in others. And I think and I'm just externally processing this a little bit right now, but I think one of the things for me that I've probably, I'll say, matured on a little bit is, and have noticed when I think I'm doing it right versus doing it wrong, is when I can really, like you said, see the incredible workmanship or craftsmanship in someone's work, the great craftsmanship, and to see that ability and that talent and that gift.
Yeah.
And to appreciate it in that person, and to appreciate and let it show me something about God. It gives me, again, an appreciation for God in seeing it through that person versus seeing it and feeling rivalry, feeling insecure with myself. Like I was saying earlier, I left there truly humbled, not insecure. I didn't feel worse about myself. I felt like I was put in the proper perspective, because there are some times I feel really low, and there are other times I feel better than most or whatever. Like I might be thinking too much of myself. And I think going in there, it's like, God, you have put so much in so many people. And I mean, very easily I could have lived and died and never gone and seen the beauty of that work. It makes me think about how many other things, how many other brilliant, amazing image bearers of God have there been in every nook and cranny of this world who have made things I'll never see. And yet God sees all of it, right? And so what does it do? It puts me in my place in the best possible way. And it allows me to appreciate this person, understanding fully that they're finite, that they're not God, but they're image bearers of God.
Right.
And God's done this billions of times. And each person, even if they're not Michelangelo making, works that hundreds of years later people will come stare at, fly across the world and spend money to stare at the work that great. That's so rare, right? He's not the only one. There's others, but like it's rare. But there are image bearers all around us, and you don't have to be able to carve an amazing statue for me to be able to appreciate. So I think when you start thinking about that, I think, it could cross the line. It could cross the line into where we box God out of the whole thing. We don't need God. We don't acknowledge him. But I think those things can point to God in a way that we don't necessarily, you don't have to drench it in Christian emblems for it to have value. You can even in a moment in the temple of your own mind, sit there and have a worshipful moment with God and what he has gifted and enabled someone else to be able to do.
Yeah. That was exactly what I was just going to say was I think, you and I have talked before about the unfortunate tendency that we have sometimes to dehumanize people, right? To see them as less or to just not fully recognize the divine spark in them, right? The way that they are an image bearer of God. And that makes it easy for us to mistreat one another and for us to not appreciate one another. And I think moments like that you described where you are seeing the genius in another person, you're appreciating the capabilities in it. It's kind of this weird thing where it's like it restores and reminds you of their humanity. You don't just see them as another cog in the wheel, another, just one of a billion, whatever. It's like, no, each one of us is one in a billion, one in trillions that have lived on this earth over the course of history. And so you really like get perspective again, not just on yourself and, the point that you made about being humbled or whatever, but it reminds you of the divine breath that's been put in every single person, and it reminds you to appreciate every single person for what they bring to the table that is once in this lifetime and never again. And it really is mind-blowing when you stop and you consider that there have been billions and billions of these once in a lifetime ever people, that came and put their fingerprint on things in earth and then were gone. And some of it, their fingerprints, like you said, are so renowned that you will fly across the world to go look at their work. And other people, it's passed down in the smallest things, that maybe it's this loving habit that this mother passed down and her daughter replicated and her son replicated and through generations. And you don't even know where it started, but you still do this kind gesture with your children that your great, 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 however many grandparent did. Does that make sense? Like, and so I think just it makes you more conscious of the beauty in other people, and it also makes you more conscious of the importance of all the little things that you do.
Yeah. I think the proper response to when you see, somebody doing something great, right? Like we were, you and I saw the other day on Instagram, it was a video of a guy who actually I reached out to. I was so inspired by his work. I reached out to him. I was like, man, where do you live?
Yeah.
I'm like, we'll do an event. We'll have this guy. He lives in Nigeria.
Yeah.
But he does art with flames. So he basically like burns the canvas.
It onto the canvas.
Yeah, he burns the canvas.
And it's the most lifelike thing you've ever seen.
Unbelievable. We will have to, I don't know what the copyright is or whatever.
Yeah.
We're going to have to show I showed it to Ella, and we just sat there with our jaws on
every
the ground.
pore, every fleck in an eye.
I don't know how it's like, it feels like a magic trick. Like it's crazy.
This guy's just a master of his work.
And I was like, man, if you're ever in the US, hit me up, because honestly, I would love to just have the guy to our church and just watch his work. Yeah. Like it is incredible.
Yeah.
So again, all that to say, you see something great that someone does. I think the proper response, one, is to enjoy their gift with them, to appreciate their gift with them, to not be jealous of it, to not feel a rivalry with it.
That's right.
But to go, man, I get a few breaths in this earth and I got to observe that with my eyes and take that in with my senses. Like, I'm so grateful. And to just sit there in a state of gratitude and have that worshipful moment. And then I think the second proper response is then to do your art, to do your thing. And that might be the way that you teach your class. Okay. It would be a mistake for me to walk out of the Sistine Chapel and go, what does my life matter? My little sermon I'm going to do. We're building, these buildings, it's nothing compared to what Michelangelo did. It's nothing compared to, what these other great people, these artists. No, man, like, appreciate what God has enabled them to do and has done, essentially breathe life through them to be able to share and connect with it. And then go back and fully appreciate the art that you do.
That's right.
And it may look nothing like a sculpture. It may look nothing like that, but it's whatever your hand finds to do.
That's right.
You do it with all your might, and you see it as your worshipful expression. Okay, whether it's with technology, with your laptop, or you make apps, or again, you may be a teacher, you may be a builder, you may be a mathematician, you may be an athlete. Whatever it is that you do, to bring your whole heart to your art, and let that sort of brilliance and that what the other person did inspire you to go back and do what you do, and to do it all the way well. So I think that I don't think that's idolatry. I don't think that's stealing credit from God. I think it's probably the way I would guess that God wants us to respond.
I agree. I think that the recognition of his divine genius, that has been placed in another person, and then the way that they've cultivated it, I think is absolutely beautiful and absolutely something he would want to appreciate. I think sometimes we tend to think of the beauty in the world as kind of it's extra, or it's fluff, or it's non-essential, or whatever. I don't agree with that. I think it's woven into the very fabric of the creation of earth for a reason. I think that it's meant to be something that consistently points us back and recalibrates us, has us looking at God with fresh eyes and deeper understanding, and also, like you said, helps us have proper perspective of ourselves and the good that is ours to do in the world. And it has nothing to do with whether it's on scale, so to speak, with someone else's, but we each have the unique opportunity to put forth what is good and beautiful from the depths of our soul into the world and let it bless others. And I think that there is just something so spectacular. I struggle for words when we acknowledge the beautiful things that others have in them. And then we acknowledge, like you said, not from a place of jealousy or anything else, but just it helps us find wholehearted joy in what is beautiful that we have to bring into the world. And it helps us appreciate our Creator in a whole new way. It doesn't distract us from our Creator. If you are coming at it from that place in your soul, it actually helps you appreciate and feel gratitude and feel focus on your Creator and what he's doing through you in a whole different way.
I'll tell you what was interesting too is one of the reasons I'm really glad we didn't just go walk through and look at everything, but we had the art historian with us, was she shared so much of the backstory and the elements of the story that I'm sure other art historians know. It's not like it's a huge, it's not like it's a hidden history, but stuff I didn't know.
Yeah.
But of the pain and the struggle of, like, for example, she talked a lot about Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel, and not just the fact that he had, had his head up for 3 years or was laying on his back or whatever, but just the internal turmoil that he went through, that even in, one of the scenes that he painted, he has this person who's like in anguish, and it's his face, like that he was at odds with some of the power brokers at that time, and was struggling even as he's painting some of the most beautiful historic images of God and of the story of the Bible. He himself is struggling to accept God's grace, and to even again she was sharing about some of the battles he was having with the people in power about what he was going to paint and how he was going to paint it, and his own feeling about his own sin. And again, you see a sculpture, you see a painting, or you see somebody's life, whatever they do, often we just see the sculpture, and there's so much more going on in every one of those scenarios that often is full of a lot of challenge, a lot of pain, so to me, again, it was a deep process, just even that day that we did that, because I mean, that's true of all of us. I know it's true of me. I'm putting things in the world that I believe God's given me to do, and I'm very much at peace with it. Like I'm not jealous of the sculptor. I'm not jealous of anybody doing anything else. I feel like I have a healthy perspective that there are many people that do what I do better than I do, people that have done it before I've done it, people who do it after I have. I don't have this self-aggrandizing. I don't need everybody staring at my work 400 years from now for me to feel like I'm significant.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I do want to just do what God's given me to do, maximize my gifts for the people in front of me, the people that God's given me to serve. And so every week I'm presenting. Even this is a form of that, but I get up and share a monologue, a sermon every week, and that's my best work I can do. I've prayed on it, I've labored on it, I work relentlessly, I dig, I pray, I try to come up, like, I want to present something that honors God, that reveals God, that puts his image in the world, that maybe helps somebody see a lie for what it is and find a little bit more truth, come to more peace, to atone for their sin, to have come out of their shame, to again connect to God. Like, I'm very much at peace with that work, and I don't need those sculptures. Like I said, I don't need everybody to say they're the best or whatever. Ultimately, I know God will use it, but I also know that behind the sculpture is a lot of struggle. It's a lot of pain. It's a lot of times confusion, on every level, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And there's the part of the sculpture that the world sees. And then there's, you and your hammer and chisel in a room by yourself. And not even just the stuff related to the work. A lot of what ended up in a canvas was affected by things having nothing to do with a paintbrush. It had stuff to do with things he was battling. And so I think, man, the reality is, I think it would do us all well as we look at what other people are doing in the world. We know what we see. We know what they put out there. There's often a lot more going on, depth behind the scenes.
I think that's such an important lesson.
And to embrace it in our own art. To embrace it in our own art, to go, look, there are ways that you will do what you do in life that are being impacted by often the deepest wrestlings, the deepest questions, the dark nights, the pain that you walk through and work through and sometimes learn to live with. And I don't think that's idolatry to get all of that out of it, without just, pointing to heaven the whole time. I mean, I think all of it points to heaven.
That's right.
But I think there's a lot that God uses in humanity. A lot of the Bible is about being human. The Bible is about God, certainly points us to God, but there's a whole lot of the Bible that shows us the full human experience and what it means to be a human being.
That's
and
right.
the pitfalls and the traps that seem to just keep showing up in every generation because humans are there. And I think in that journey, we find God, and often it's in not being afraid to look at the human side of it that you maybe end up seeing something about God that maybe you've been missing.
Yeah. Couldn't think of a better place to end it than right there. Honestly, that's absolutely beautiful. And I think that's the value in not just in moments where you look at art and you think about God, but I think conversations like this, I hope it gives people permission to look around themselves and not be afraid to look around and notice things and think that somehow that's them taking off their eyes off God, because they're not just looking straight at scripture all the time or straight, but look around and notice him woven into absolutely everything around you.
Yeah.
Because he is there.
I'll tell you what I took away from it too was all these genius sculptors. Nobody made anything as beautiful as what God made that's sitting across from me right now.
Come on, now's the time to cut the tape.
Hey, that's some Riz right there.
It was.
That's some Riz. Michelangelo can't mess with that. That was God's work right there, straight out of his hand.
All right, I think you need your eyes checked. I love you very much.
I love you too.
All right.